There's nothing more iconic in a genre such as survival horror than your first real encounter with what you're up against. And Resident Evil captured just that when it came into the known gaming universe in 1996 or 98 in regards to its timeline. Hello everyone, Primal here and welcome to my ranking of all of the original Resident Evil's boss monsters from worst to best. We've got another remake on the way, and this time for the third installment involving the lovely Jill Valentine's escape from Raccoon City and the monstrous, never-ending nightmare of the Nemesis. So I figured I'd prepare some more for it by doing a ranking on the game that started it all with the OG Spencer Mansion incident and the star's heroine herself as my focus for it. Well, the boss monsters are actually the real focus, but you guys know what I mean. There aren't really that many, and they aren't entirely well made or even last more than a full 5 minutes or so necessarily, but they are very interesting and provide a genuine sense of dread and fear. But overall, the very first Resident Evil game is actually the best if you look at it in terms of its survival horror roots. This is also the game that put the genre of survival horror on the map for many gamers, game devs, and their own works of art. So with that said now out of the way, let's once again enter the survival horror, possibly with some giggles and shits and kibbles and bits this time around.
Why look, an otter in my water.
These zombified great whites are indeed quite a nuisance. They have full range of mobility over their territory, meaning they can come in and nosh on you from anywhere and almost everywhere. But just because they're in a whole different element doesn't mean that they're immune to offense. They can be disposed of like any other enemy in the game with a bullet to the brain. But given your ultimate goal here, you can really just deal with them without sparing a single round. Though I prefer to fight and kill them just because this is the only time you'll encounter them in the game, and I prefer to kill all monsters in manner of evil. So if you do choose to deep six them, make sure you reach the high ground at the end of the hall, right at the entrance to the control room where you're supposed to go. After dealing with the two that chase you around the room, there's the matter of the big one to deal with. And you can easily brush her off if you're fast enough to reach the bottom level. However, I forgot to pick up the key for the control area and I had to dodge her going back for it and, of course, on my way back. Unlike her spawn, she can't be killed by conventional means, and she can pop up for a bite anywhere unexpectedly, making her one of the most terrifying and tense encounters yet. The fact that my parents chose 47 meters down uncaged as part of our movie night did not help with my PTSD after playing this bit whatsoever. Basically, this whole deep-sea shark watching experience is a lame puzzle fight that boils down to having little to no trouble depending on your actions, with the only true entertainment value coming from the choice to kill the small fry and cooking up fish and chips with some shark fin soup on the side possibly, which is why it's at the bottom of the list for me. So when you finally reach the key that you need, you find that Mama's still kicking and there's a major roadblock death trap between you and it. But luckily for you, there's a generator attached to a movable control panel nearby, so if you put two and two together with the common knowledge of what happens when you put a toaster in the bathtub, Bob's your uncle. You know, to be honest, I really didn't find this one all that bad this time around. But still, it does feel a little bit unbalanced in terms of its design to me. Given how you have to go upstairs to fight it, and it's quite a distance from you, and the CCTV camera angle throws you off a little bit, and as the attacks are somewhat unpredictable, it suffers quite a bit. However, it does offer you the special option of being given the means to take care of it another way, though the game does expect you to follow it. So what you're supposed to do is get access to the lab, which has an extremely complicated entry code. Once inside, you follow the formula on the wall or from the file to synthesize the roundup you need to kill it. Once you've done that, head back to the shark tank area in the basement and enter the room you couldn't before, past the control room, and offer the cocktail to its roots. By doing this, Audrey's cruciferous cousin will be severely weakened, and if you're playing as Jill, the whole fight can actually be bypassed entirely because Barry will come in with a flamethrower and make cooked asparagus from it. Basically, what I'm saying is this fight can be either one of the most enduring or one of the most non-existent depending on your actions. But you actually do get the best of both worlds while playing as Chris because you still have to actually fight it even though you use the poison on it. Though given how the scales tip to one side too much depending on what you do, it really doesn't have much entertainment value, and that's why I've placed the Gaia Man Trap right here. Okay, you know just by looking at this place there's bound to be something bad lurking in here. And if you've seen Disney's Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy, you know exactly where this is going. These guys are just basic zombies, but they're brought back by the T-virus after you down them one time for round 2. The first time around, this unexpectedly new mechanic left us all going. So just remember, kids.
Don't mess with the zombies.
This fight is a little more entertaining, but the fact that you're stuck in a confined space with an extremely fast-moving foe makes this one a total cluster. I mean, if you stay ahead of him and time your attacks directly after his, it can be made more balanced, plus it loses points for also being a regular enemy. Oh, and do make sure to bring plenty of defensive items, otherwise...
I got you, I eat you.
Nope! Allow me to paint you guys a picture of this entry with a specifically edited clip real quick.
What the fuck is that?
Well, you guys really won't have to wait long until you find out what makes that ungodly noise. This one may not look like much, but she is indeed a force to be reckoned with. The first time you meet her, she traps you in her house, which looks like it came straight out of Friday the 13th. Like the Neptunes, you can get past her without using any ammo, but I prefer to fight her since it's the only time I get any satisfactory feeling of defeating her, even though it really won't kill her. You'll meet her 2 more times later on, with the former actually allowing you to evade her much more easily. But the final encounter in the family crypt is much more of a challenge. She's much more durable this time. The only solid ground under your feet here is basically a tightrope. And given the extreme constraints of this arena, she can pretty much one-shot you. Although I have no clue whatsoever what her hinte is for other than being an effect to show you that she's far from human. If you choose to trust Barry during the introduction of this fight, it will be a big help because he'll use his trusted magnum to aid you, and mag ammo seems to be the only effective means against her. Your main goal during this encounter is to remove the stone columns, which is made fair by repelling her off the edge for a bit. Once all 4 have been removed, the gate will raise and she'll leave you alone for the rest of the game, because by removing the stones, you'll give her what she's wanted for over 30 years. It's not really a bad encounter whatsoever, but it does feel lacking since you can't really kill her like everything else in the game.
Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout.
That's not a fucking spider, that's a dinosaur!
You've faced a good number of these Titan tarantulas up until now, so the devs thought, let's give you an even bigger one with a bigger health pool and its pantry-sized nest to squash. It's not too bad since the spider is only a real threat if you're right in front of it. And you have enough room to pull that off as long as it's in the center where you can keep it there by not baiting its charge.
No, my butt.
With the right ammo and right weapon, you can easily blast it apart with a couple well-placed shots. He does also have his lesser kin as backup, but they aren't too much trouble as long as you're not in their strike zone. I think we can all agree that this is where the original House of the Dead game got its inspiration for its final boss. The Tyrants are actually some of the best fights in the whole franchise. This one's rather basic, but it provided the stepping stone to some much better ones like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. These hulking and power-fisting brutes are the pinnacle and flagship project of the Umbrella Corps. The ultimate bioweapon, with each one after the other being one step closer to achieving that goal. The T-002 here in its first encounter gives you a lot of reprieve. He's a bit slow in pacing, but powerful, so it's best not to get stuck between him and a wall. Though as long as you keep your eye on him and swiftly familiarize yourself with the layout of the lab, you can easily be on top of the game. Also, if you don't want it to feel too easy or unbalanced, don't use your magnum. Once you gun him down the first time, he'll come back for some sloppy seconds when you've all but escaped the mansion. Depending on your actions and choices throughout the whole game, you can have a partner for this one or not at all, or you can skip it entirely. The stakes are quite high during the ultimate final showdown because you'll have to kill him before time is up, and this is another fight where you can lose your partner. Also, he's gained some new tricks, one of which where he just starts running and tries to rail you. Once you've done enough damage, Brad will toss you the rocket launcher to deal the final blow. All you have to do now is aim and time it just right. You do that and you'll have survived all of the horror this place has to offer, leaving nothing else to stand in your way as you ride off into the sunrise. While the Tyrant is probably the best thing in terms of a monster to come out of this game, let alone the whole franchise, there's just one more that stands above it. I never would have expected the first real boss of this game to be a Basileus, or that it would be so good as to actually be the best in regards to the previous 6. Everything about this supersized serpent is well balanced, the difficulty, the design, the pacing of it, not to mention the fact it's actually quite terrifying. Just like some of the others before it. You don't really have to fight this abnormal adder the first time you run into it. You can just grab the death mask at the back of the room and then head out the way you came in. But who wouldn't want to charm this colossal cobra with a fun fight? Plus Richard is there if you save him, so just go for it. His shotgun will rip off a huge chunk of its health. But then a cinematic will play where he sacrifices himself for you and then you have to finish it off yourself. Or you can just leave if you already grabbed the death mask. Hit him with like 3 shotgun blasts and Nag here will have had enough for the day and bail. Also, make sure you don't get bit, otherwise you'll have to make a trip to poison control for the bite. And by that I mean you have to return to the medicine room and get the serum. Once you return to the mansion from the residence, you'll run into him again while trying to get one of the items for the lab in the library. Here is where you can finish him off. The library has plenty of room for crowd control against him by using the conveniently placed bookshelf to distance yourself and limit his movement. But be aware he can unexpectedly switch on you. With the new gear you've obtained up to this point, you can have the scales tipped in your favor. Just make sure not to get greedy and keep your distance. And constantly be on the move because he can keep up with you quite well. All of these aspects about it and then some make this gargantuan Gaboon Viper a fight for the history books. Well guys, that wraps up my ranking for the Resident Evil bosses, and the remainder of my preparations for the RE3 remake next month. Do y'all agree with my list? Who's number 1 in your book? Well, we got quite a ways to go before the RE3 remake comes out, but that doesn't mean I won't keep dishing out awesome content. So stay tuned for more coming soon, and I shall see you guys next time. Peace!
Resident